Hey guys, tonight we're plunging headfirst into something more dramatic than your Aunt Linda's Facebook arguments. The disturbing daily life of Victorian London royals. That's right, forget Netflix. Tonight, your sleep soundtrack is going to be powered by tales of corsets so tight you might see God, dinners so bland they could be considered a hate crime, and royal scandals so wild you'll be grateful your family group chat is only mildly unhinged. So before you settle in, take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is for you. Now, go ahead. Dim those lights. Crank on a fan for that white noise. And get into whatever position is least likely to trigger your lower back pain. Get comfy. This is your time. But let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered how many royal children it takes to spark a nationwide crisis over dessert? Or how a prince in the world's fanciest pajamas managed to turn a simple walk through the palace garden into an Olympic event of fainting and gossip? Did anyone in Victorian times ever manage to go to the bathroom without 6 servants, a bucket, and a moral crisis? Was Queen Victoria's dog actually more important than half the government? And just how many royal family members does it take to avoid a bath for 6 weeks straight and still get painted as a vision of beauty? Ever wanted to know what happens when your mother's idea of affection is not making you wear a 14-pound hat in public? Or what it's like to wake up and realize you're technically a god, but your breakfast is still cold gruel? Congratulations. You've just woken up in Buckingham Palace, London, 1847. You're royalty now. You have a headache from the gas lamps, a butler waiting to help you put on socks, and a very real chance of dying from boredom or gout. Let's begin. The sun rises over London, but you don't get up on your own. Instead, a battalion of servants parades into your bedroom at the exact, painfully early hour set by someone who doesn't actually have to get up. Curtains are yanked open. Hot water is poured. Someone fetches your slippers. Another brings you news you don't care about. Meanwhile, your hair looks like it lost a fight with a chamber pot. Welcome to the most over-engineered alarm clock in history. You try to blink awake, but there's already a valet fussing over your pillow arrangement, as if an extra inch to the left might trigger an international incident. Another servant holds a tray with today's medicinal morning tonic, which smells suspiciously like yesterday's foot bath. He watches you drink it, eyes wide with concern, partly for your health, mostly for his job security. In the far corner, a governess is already compiling a mental list of your failures before breakfast. You get the feeling she's been up for hours, fueled by anxiety and the knowledge that she can't quit until you're old enough to marry your second cousin. The room itself is colder than expected, because Victorian palaces are basically elaborate refrigerators with slightly better wallpaper. The fire in your hearth went out ages ago, but protocol dictates that a footman should revive it exactly 3 minutes after you wake up, and not a moment before. So you lie in bed, wrapped in 14 pounds of monogrammed linen, shivering in a way that feels both aristocratic and slightly existential. Someone brings you a damp flannel cloth for your face, which is neither hot nor cold, but exactly the temperature of disappointment. Then comes the sound you dread the most, the brisk click of sensible shoes on hardwood. That's your mother, or perhaps the household matron, doing her rounds. She pokes her head in to make sure you're still breathing and not, say, reading novels under the covers or plotting to escape out the window. She asks if you slept well, but the question is rhetorical. Royals are expected to wake up refreshed, grateful, and absolutely ready to sit motionless for the next hour, while being dressed like a particularly anxious cake, while you're still trying to figure out how to make your face look awake but not too awake. It's an art form. Someone brings in the Morning Post. Most of it is bad news. Cousin Leopold's gout, a minor scandal involving a goose at Windsor, a stern reminder that you're due for another portrait sitting. You nod politely, pretending you understand any of it. The only part you care about is the rumor that breakfast will include something called French toast, which is probably just regular toast that's been scolded in another language. Now, let's talk about the actual business of getting up. You're not allowed to just leap out of bed like a normal person with somewhere to be. No, you must be assisted. A valet brings your slippers, another adjusts your dressing gown, and someone else, whose title you've never learned, offers you a selection of monogrammed hairbrushes, each designed for a different mood. You pick one at random just to feel something. Outside your window, the city is waking up too. Vendors shouting, horses clattering, chimney sweeps hacking up last night's air. But here, in your four-poster prison, everything is orchestrated for maximum inefficiency. You long for privacy, but it's not in the royal budget. If you so much as sneeze, 3 people rush over with separate handkerchiefs, and at least one writes it down in a journal for the historical record. Eventually, after a negotiation that feels like a small diplomatic summit, you're upright, swaddled in enough layers to survive a polar expedition. The room is a battlefield of towels, discarded nightcaps, and yesterday's melancholy. And as you shuffle toward the dressing room, you catch your reflection in a gilded mirror, eyes puffy, hair wild, looking exactly like someone who was woken up by a committee. And so begins another day in the palace. You're not awake. You're merely activated. But at least you didn't have to set your own alarm. Small mercies. Royal style. Clothing isn't something you put on. It's something that is constructed upon you, layer by woolen, itchy, increasingly absurd layer. There's a lady in waiting for every sleeve, a valet for every shoelace. And God help you if your cravat isn't tied with mathematical precision. Otherwise, Parliament may collapse from embarrassment. The royal dressing ritual is less about fashion and more about orchestrated suffering. The process starts with a series of hopeful questions. Would you like the blue waistcoat or the slightly less blue waistcoat? Do you prefer the new silk chemise, which itches like it was woven by vengeful spiders? Or the old linen one, which smells like memories of last Christmas dinner? You're not sure it matters, since both will be buried under 3 more shirts, a doublet, 2 vests, a cravat, and, eventually, a jacket so heavily embroidered you could repel light artillery fire. First, your undergarments. Yes, plural. Royal protocol demands that you wear a long linen shirt, followed by drawers that tie awkwardly in the back, designed for maximum inconvenience. On chilly mornings, thick wool stockings are wriggled up your legs by 2 footmen, each trying to avoid eye contact and a lifetime of shame. The stockings itch, of course, but not as much as the garters, frilled, bejeweled, and specifically engineered to cut off circulation just above the knee. The real fun starts with the waistcoat. One servant holds it open while another threads your arms through, and a third stands by with emergency lint brushes in case a speck of dust dares to approach. Next comes the shirt with ruffled cuffs, so large they could double as portable picnic tables. A brooch or 2, depending on your mood, and the exact barometric pressure. If your shirt doesn't have at least 6 pearl buttons and a monogram, expect a letter of complaint from the Duchess of Kent by noon. Now, the cravat. The cravat is both a necktie and an IQ test. It must be folded, wrapped, tucked, fluffed, and stabbed with a pin sharp enough to remind you you're alive. There are at least 8 acceptable styles: waterfall, barrel knot, horse collar, agony of defeat, but only one is correct for today. Choose poorly, and you'll spend the rest of the day being quietly judged by your own reflection. Your trousers are next. Not pants, mind you. Trousers. They button all the way up, which means at least 20 tiny, stubborn buttons for your valet to wrestle while you stare at the ceiling and try not to panic about the upcoming breakfast ordeal. Shoes are polished until you can see your future in them, which, honestly, is mostly more shoes. Slip them on, buckle them, and let someone else tie the laces. Your noble fingers must never risk a cramp. Then comes the jacket. Velvet, brocade, silk, and possibly cursed by a disappointed ancestor. It weighs at least 5 pounds and squeaks when you move. Over this, a sash, medals, even if you're not sure what they're for, and, if the occasion calls for it, a ceremonial sword that has not been drawn in anger since the last time a corgi staged an uprising. Finally, the hat. No royal ensemble is complete without a hat large enough to inspire maritime navigation. You don't wear the hat so much as negotiate its presence. If it's raining, someone follows you with a small umbrella. If it's windy, a valet will attempt to pin it to your hair using techniques passed down by frightened milliners. By the end, you're less a person and more a well-upholstered settee with opinions. But congratulations, you're finally dressed. Only 6 more costume changes until dinner. You sit at a table the length of a bowling alley. Breakfast involves at least 9 courses, none of which actually taste like food. Your siblings argue over who gets the softest boiled egg while a footman hovers, waiting for you to drop your spoon so he can hand you a new one, just in case the old one caught some commoner air. It all begins with a parade of cutlery. There's a fork for every occasion, a knife for every possible act of self-defense, and spoons that come in sizes ranging from thimble to potential canoe paddle. You're expected to know which one to use for which food. A challenge that might as well require an advanced degree. The wrong spoon at the wrong time, and you're one step closer to exile in the wilds of Cornwall. The first course arrives. Something called kedgeree. You're told it's a delicacy, but it looks suspiciously like last night's regret mixed with rice and a dash of existential despair. You push it around your plate with the correct fork, hoping no one notices you're not actually eating it. Meanwhile, the butler, who appears to be both everywhere and nowhere, refills your glass of morning sherry, which, despite its name, tastes like defeat and raisins. Next comes a procession of toast. Not one kind, but 5. White, brown, nearly burned, slightly less burned, and continental, which is just French bread someone waved at the fire. The butter is rock hard, the jam looks like it's hiding secrets, and if you drop a crumb, there's a silent war for who gets to brush it away. The footman with the silver brush or your sister, who collects crumbs for her diary of royal injustices. Eggs appear, each more mysterious than the last. Soft-boiled, hard-boiled, poached, coddled, and once an egg en cocotte, which may or may not be a prank invented by French chefs. You open yours to find it's both hot and cold at the same time. A feat of science and disappointment. You glance down the table at your siblings, all poking suspiciously at their plates. Each convinced the other has the good egg. It's a breakfast arms race. And you're losing. There is always a fruit course. Usually grapes, sometimes an apple cut, so precisely it looks like it came from a geometry textbook. If you eat the fruit too early, you're reminded, gently but firmly, that fruit is not a starter. It's a palate cleanser, as decreed by some royal ancestor whose portrait now judges you from the wall. The porridge is next. It arrives in a silver tureen and tastes exactly like someone described oats to a distant relative, who then tried to recreate the recipe using only rumors and despair. A tiny amount of brown sugar is allowed, but not too much. No one wants another incident like the great sugar scandal of 42, when your cousin Edmund ate 3 spoonfuls and was banned from the piano for a week. Coffee is served, but it's thick, strong, and brewed by someone who has never actually tasted coffee. You add milk, which instantly curdles, forming a tiny floating island that mocks your efforts at modernity. Tea is also available, poured from a teapot that's older than the building and tastes faintly of whatever was last stored in it, probably shoe polish. As you finish, the staff clears the table with the efficiency of a military operation. You're left sitting in silence, surrounded by siblings in varying states of distress, contemplating the day ahead. Breakfast is over, but the real ordeal, surviving royal life, has just begun. If you made it through without committing a major etiquette crime, you're already ahead of the game. And if you accidentally used the dessert spoon for eggs again, well, at least you'll make the family gossip column. Want to be alone? Too bad. Someone is always lurking, servants hiding behind doors, nannies popping out of wardrobes, tutors materializing like ghosts with a Latin lesson. Even in the bathroom, your only audience is a disapproving footman and a bidet that looks like a medieval torture device. In the palace, privacy is less a right and more a rumor. From the moment you blink awake to the minute you collapse into bed at night, you're never more than 4 feet from someone whose job is to anticipate your every need and document your every mistake. Need a shirt? There's already a valet holding one. Need a fresh towel? A housemaid is standing just off stage, waiting for her cue. Even thinking about being alone is enough to summon a minor noble with a tray of tepid tea. The palace staff moves with a silence that's both impressive and deeply unsettling. You'll be staring into the fireplace, contemplating the meaning of existence, and suddenly a butler appears with a fresh log and a lecture about ash distribution. You wonder if they travel through secret tunnels. Sometimes you're sure they simply ooze out from the paneling, like very polite phantoms who won't leave until you've accepted your 3rd glass of barley water. Your bedroom is never truly your own. There's always someone bustling around, just tidying, which means shifting things 2 inches to the left, and then reporting your sock color to the housekeeper. Your diary isn't private either. If you attempt to hide it, it will be discovered by a chambermaid within the hour and returned with a look of silent judgment. Sometimes, for good measure, accompanied by a carefully folded note correcting your spelling. Trying to escape to the gardens? Good luck. The head gardener tracks your every move, anxious that you might trample a tulip, or, heaven forbid, pick an apple before it's reached its full potential. Your solitary stroll quickly turns into a parade, with a footman lagging 10 paces behind, pretending to inspect the gravel. The royal dog walker joins, even if you didn't bring a dog. By the time you reach the rose bushes, you've somehow acquired 3 aunts, a governess, and the local bishop, all eager to share opinions on your posture. The bathrooms are a tragedy in themselves. The so-called modern fixtures are less about privacy and more about offering fresh ways to feel embarrassed. Each time you try to sneak away for a moment alone, you're trailed by a footman who pretends to be deeply interested in the arrangement of the soap. The official groom of the stool stands by. Yes, that's an actual job, ready to assist with any necessary ablutions. You wonder if it's possible to die of mortification before noon. Study time is no reprieve. Tutors appear the moment you consider slacking off, brandishing geography maps, Greek primers, and expressions of eternal disappointment. If you try to escape under the guise of illness, you'll be visited by the royal physician, 3 nurses, and a well-meaning aunt who swears by boiled onions and unsolicited life advice. The only guaranteed alone time happens by accident, maybe behind a curtain, or in the brief half-second between one servant leaving and the next arriving. But even then, you're not truly alone. Someone is always dusting, recording, advising, or simply breathing too loudly. If you ever did manage to vanish for more than 5 minutes, an entire search party would be deployed, convinced you've been abducted by revolutionaries or, worse, have gone to visit the kitchens unsupervised. Royalty, it turns out, is just another word for permanently observed. Privacy is for commoners. Up here, you share everything, except your secrets, and even those are usually discovered before tea. Let's talk toilets. You don't actually get to go in peace. There's a chamber pot. There's an official groom of the stool whose entire career revolves around your posterior. Congratulations, you've reached peak awkwardness before you've even had your tea. In the Victorian palace, the journey to the bathroom is less a private affair and more a state-sponsored event. There is no casual excuse me for a moment. Instead, your need for relief is anticipated by a finely tuned network of staff. They spring into action the moment you shift uncomfortably in your chair. Somewhere, a bell rings, a code phrase is whispered, and within seconds a footman stands ready to escort you to the necessary chamber. You're not sure whether to be flattered or frightened. The toilet itself is a marvel of outdated technology. Forget indoor plumbing as you know it. Most mornings, you're presented with a chamber pot, bone china if you're lucky, dented pewter if you're not. This elegant vessel is hidden in plain sight beneath your bed, or, if you're at a formal dinner, sometimes lurking discreetly behind a decorative screen. The chamber pot is then spirited away by a servant who has mastered the art of not making eye contact. And you're left to wonder how anyone in history ever managed to develop a healthy relationship with their bladder. On special occasions, you might be allowed to use the palace's water closet, the ancestor of the modern toilet. This device is less about comfort and more about proving how complicated basic hygiene can be when you add velvet upholstery, brass fittings, and a flush mechanism that sounds like a minor landslide. If you pull the wrong cord, you risk flooding the entire wing, which is a surefire way to end up on the receiving end of a very stern letter from your grandmother. Of course, the main character in this royal bathroom drama is the groom of the stool. This isn't a nickname or a joke. It's a coveted position with real power. His sole responsibility is to assist with your, let's say, private evacuations. He's the keeper of the royal wipes, the guardian of the perfumed water, and, historically, one of the most trusted courtiers in the entire palace. The groom of the stool not only helps you handle the business end of things, but also listens to your complaints, secrets, and existential crises, all while holding a monogrammed sponge and pretending not to judge. Washing up afterward is its own ordeal. Bowls of tepid water are brought in, scented with rose or lavender, though nothing can mask the underlying aroma of centuries-old plumbing. There are clean towels, a choice of soaps, all labeled for sensitive royal skin, and at least 3 people on standby to help you dry your hands. Or, in some cases, just to reassure you that you're still the most important person in the room, even if you just spent 10 minutes wrestling with buttons in a very unroyal squat. Privacy is not included. The bathroom door, if it exists at all, never quite shuts properly, and someone is always waiting outside, ready to inquire after your digestion. If you're lucky, you make it through the entire process without a distant cousin barging in, demanding to borrow your hairbrush, or a court artist bursting in to sketch royal daily life. And so, in the grand palaces of Victorian London, using the bathroom is not an escape from court life, it's just another command performance. Dignity is optional. Awkwardness is mandatory. If you think Spanx are uncomfortable, imagine being squeezed into a whale-boned corset so tight that you can't bend, breathe, or possibly digest solids until next Tuesday. Bonus points if someone faints before breakfast. It's fashion, but make it medieval chiropractic torture. Getting dressed as a Victorian royal is a group project, one that requires several strong-willed assistants, a detailed game plan, and the upper body strength of a small army. Your day begins with a valet or lady's maid holding up the corset like it's Excalibur, but far more dangerous. There's a faint look of apology as they warn you, once again, to exhale if you please. Then comes the lacing, an ancient ritual involving crisscrossing strings, a wooden busk, and enough tension to launch you across the channel if they slip. As the laces tighten, you start to understand why fainting couches are such a palace staple. Each tug compresses your ribcage, rearranges your organs, and removes any hope of ever slouching again. You try to make polite conversation, but mostly you wheeze quietly and focus on not passing out. Somewhere in the background, someone's great-aunt is explaining that pain builds character, while you wonder if you'll ever be able to laugh again without sounding like a distressed accordion. The corset isn't just underwear, it's a symbol, a physical manifestation of Victorian values, discipline, restraint, and a desire to look fabulous at all times, even if you can't lift your own arms. It's designed to flatten, cinch, and lift, sculpting your body into the ideal hourglass shape, or at least a reasonable imitation. The result is a waist so small it could be used as a sundial and posture so upright that sitting down feels like a moral failing. Let's not forget, corsets are equal opportunity tormentors. While women bear the brunt, embroidered, whalebone marvels, laced tighter than your childhood friendships, men also get their own version. Stiff waistcoats, tightly tailored jackets, and enough buttons to trigger an existential crisis before breakfast. Everyone is a victim. Even the family dog probably dreams of breathable fabrics. Corset fashion is a paradox. You must look effortless, but the effort required is Herculean. While you stand tall and serene, inside your head you're calculating how many minutes you can survive before your left lung gives up. Eating becomes a logistical puzzle. A normal meal transforms into a 3-hour ordeal, as each bite requires careful chewing, strategic swallowing, and the fervent hope that nobody expects you to laugh at a joke. Heaven help you if someone serves peas. Walking in a corset is a performance. You glide, you float, you try not to tip over like a fainting goat. Stairs are a hazard, sitting is an adventure, and sneezing, well, sneezing is now an extreme sport, best attempted with a spotter and a footman holding smelling salts. If you do faint, at least there's always a decorative chaise lounge nearby, installed for exactly this purpose, and conveniently located under all the best oil paintings. Despite all this, the corset is non-negotiable. You wear it because everyone else does, and because a scandal over an untied lace could ripple through the palace faster than a rumor about Aunt Augusta's gin habit. The best you can hope for is a sympathetic maid and a window cracked open for air. So, as you take your first tiny, upright steps toward breakfast, remember, style is pain. Pain is tradition, and tradition is enforced by a network of aunts. You might not breathe easy, but you'll look the part, at least until lunch. Even your pajamas are an event. Silk, monogrammed, and so restrictive you'd have an easier time escaping from Alcatraz than rolling over in bed. Of course, there's also an official royal undresser, because that's not awkward at all. Nighttime in the palace isn't just the end of the day, it's the start of a new royal performance, this time in full view of a staff who have memorized your bedtime routine down to the last slipper. Your royal sleepwear is so elaborate it's delivered on a silver tray, accompanied by a handwritten note explaining which pajamas are appropriate for the evening's weather, your mood, and whether there's a slight chance of a surprise portrait sitting in the morning. Tonight's forecast, mild with a high chance of lace cuffs. Before you even think about donning your night clothes, a valet must remove every layer of daytime regalia. This process, best described as a reverse assembly line, involves at least 3 people and the strength of character not to laugh as you stand there like a deflated parade float. They unbutton, unbuckle, and unlace, Your shoes are removed with surgical precision, sometimes requiring special tongs for hygiene reasons, while your outer garments are whisked away to be brushed, pressed, and guarded like national secrets. Finally, the pajamas. There is nothing simple about them. Your monogram is stitched so large across the pocket it could serve as a royal flag. The material is silk, which sounds luxurious until you realize it's been ironed to the consistency of origami paper. The collar is so high and starched it doubles as a medieval defense mechanism. There are buttons, ribbons, and, if you're especially unlucky, a sash for dignity. All of this is slipped onto your body by the undresser, who maintains the kind of blank, professional expression seen only in poker champions and wax statues. Should the mood require, there are alternative options. Velvet robes for cold nights, lace-trimmed nightgowns for ceremonial comfort, or the infamous flannel ensemble for times of royal indisposition. God forbid you choose the wrong set. Last time, a mix-up involving tartan pants nearly caused a diplomatic incident with the Scottish cousins. The staff now maintain a chart, cross-referenced by lunar cycle and family allergies. The undresser is not just a wardrobe technician, they are also a keeper of secrets. They've seen everything. Mismatched socks, the legendary polka dot nightcap, and the prince's questionable fondness for slippers shaped like miniature spaniels. Sometimes, you wish you could just wear something normal, like a threadbare t-shirt and sweatpants. But there's no room for comfort when you're the symbol of a nation. Besides, somewhere in the hall, your siblings are plotting to swap your slippers with cold custard. Royal bedtime is a contact sport. Your room is checked 3 times for nighttime hazards, which include open windows, errant moths, and political pamphlets left by overzealous aunts. Once you're finally painstakingly dressed, you're guided to bed and tucked in with a formality usually reserved for mummification. There are bedtime prayers, a warming pan slid under the sheets, and a glass of water placed on the bedside table. Filtered, of course, through 3 layers of anxiety. At last, the candles are extinguished. You lie motionless, afraid to wrinkle your perfectly arranged silk pajamas, haunted by the knowledge that you'll have to do it all again tomorrow. Sleep may or may not come easily, but one thing is certain: you're the best-dressed person to ever lie awake worrying about whether your nightcap clashes with your sheets. The good news, you don't have to shower every day. The bad news, no one does. Baths are rare, water is tepid, and the only thing more horrifying than the state of your armpits is the possibility of catching chill from being too clean. No wonder perfume sales are booming. As a royal, you'd think bathing would be a daily treat, a chance to soak away your regal anxieties in a tub carved from imported marble. But the truth is, most Victorians, even the ones wearing crowns, treat water with deep suspicion. Bathing is an ordeal, scheduled more by royal decree than any genuine sense of cleanliness. Once a week, if you're lucky, the stars align, your astrologer gives the all clear, and the bath is drawn. Bath time in the palace is a logistical nightmare. First, servants must haul in gallons of water, heating it over coal fires and hauling it up endless stairs, sloshing and muttering all the while. If you're not the first one in, you get second pour, water previously used by a sibling or, even worse, a royal cousin. That faint layer of mysterious foam, probably legacy grime. You try not to think about it as you slide into the tub, accompanied by the faint aroma of old soap and subtle undertones of ancient plumbing. Palace tubs are enormous, less bath and more aquatic habitat. The edges are lined with porcelain, the temperature somewhere between lukewarm tea and just boiled a potato. You can forget about bubbles, those are for the future, or at least for the French. A valet stands nearby, ready to hand you a rough flannel, and a bar of soap carved with the family crest. The soap itself is less cleansing and more abrasive exfoliation, with the scent of lavender, coal dust, and a lingering hint of disappointment. While you scrub, or at least pretend to, there's always an audience. Someone must supervise, usually a butler or maid with a notebook for recording how long you linger and whether you sing God Save the Queen off-key. Privacy is a luxury reserved for the lower classes. If you want to sneak an extra rinse, be prepared for a mild lecture on the dangers of opening the pores to evil vapors. Hair washing is its own medieval sport. Shampoo is basically scented lye. Rinsing requires several pitchers of cold water, poured with a delicacy that ensures at least half lands in your ears. By the time you're finished, your scalp tingles, your dignity's bruised, and someone's already debating whether to add rose water or camphor for shine. You pray no one decides to comb out the tangles. They say beauty is pain, but they never specified it involved so much yanking and crying. When bathing finally ends, you're hustled into a giant towel, scratchy, monogrammed, and slightly damp. Then you're dusted with talcum powder, swaddled in a dressing gown, and sent back into the palace corridors smelling, hopefully, less like boiled mutton. If you're lucky, you escape without someone poking your ears with a cotton swab for the family archive. On most days, though, royal hygiene is an illusion. Instead of water, you rely on perfume, cologne, and something called toilet vinegar, an alchemical blend of herbs and wishful thinking. Hair is powdered, clothes are aired out, and everyone pretends that no one in the entire building has sweated since the Battle of Waterloo. So, next time you complain about your 2-minute shower, remember, in the palace, cleanliness isn't next to godliness, it's next to impossible, and the only thing thicker than the perfume is the collective royal denial. Let's revisit food. The rules are endless. Fork in the left, knife in the right. And God help you if you butter your bread with the wrong knife. Breakfast takes 2 hours and 4 minor etiquette scandals. Meanwhile, you're starving, and the kippers taste like salted regret. The breakfast parade is less of a meal and more of a competitive sport. Each morning, you join your relatives at a table so long you need a map and a sturdy set of lungs to ask someone to pass the marmalade. Every seat is assigned by tradition, rank, and occasionally by how much Aunt Wilhelmina needs to glare at someone for last night's breadcrumb incident. You settle into your designated chair, wishing for invisibility or at least a short stack of pancakes. Your plate is first graced by a parade of waiters, each balancing an array of silver platters as if auditioning for the most stressful circus act in Europe. They announce every dish with a flourish, even if it's just yesterday's eggs dressed up with a parsley leaf. The bread basket arrives, white, brown, and continental, each slice arranged like a brick in a carbohydrate fortress. Next, the pastries, suspiciously uniform, suspiciously tasteless, but absolutely required to be praised as divine within earshot of the pastry chef's second cousin. Etiquette hovers over everything like a suspicious magpie. Butter must be taken with a special knife, passed clockwise, and applied without disturbing the crust. Jam is only for scones, never for rye, unless it's Thursday and you're under the age of 7. Heaven help you if you break protocol. The butler's left eyebrow will rise an entire centimeter, and someone will mention the unfortunate incident of 38 when your uncle stirred his tea counterclockwise and started a 3-day Cold War. Of course, breakfast is not complete without the appearance of the royal kippers. A smoked fish so briny it could preserve a small mammal. You pretend to enjoy them, picking around the bones and trying not to wince as the salt makes your tongue retreat in self-defense. Next come the eggs, each cooked in a different style and each destined for a different member of the family, according to a chart so complex it requires its own footnote in the family Bible. Fruit is served with surgical precision, cut into cubes, arranged in pyramids, and never, ever eaten without using the correct fork. If you drop a grape, a minor scandal erupts. If you drop a fork, you risk being reassigned to the children's table, a fate worse than exile, filled with sticky hands and loud questions about the Napoleonic Wars. Conversation at the breakfast table is a minefield. It begins politely, discussing the weather or the quality of the toast. But within minutes, someone will reference an obscure scandal from 3 generations ago, or inquire about your Latin homework, or ask if you've written your thank you notes to the Grand Duke of Luxembourg. Any attempt to escape with vague answers is met with withering stares and the kind of awkward silence that lasts until the next round of toast arrives. Eventually, as the final crumbs are swept away and the tea cools, you realize breakfast has left you both full and exhausted. You've survived the etiquette gauntlet, dodged the jam wars, and lived to eat another meal. The only thing more exhausting than royal breakfast is royal lunch. But at least for one brief moment, you can claim victory, assuming you didn't get caught buttering your scone with the fish knife. Your education is a cross between boot camp and a hostage situation. There are lessons in Greek, lessons in fencing, lessons in appropriate smiling. If you mispronounce algebra, your tutor might write a 40-page complaint to your mother. No sooner have you survived breakfast than the educational circus rolls in. The palace is a labyrinth of learning. Every corridor leads to another room filled with chalk dust, stern instructors, and at least one globe so ancient it still lists the colonies as a single, cheerful smudge. Your first lesson of the day begins before your brain is fully awake. A classical languages tutor greets you by reciting Latin poetry at a volume typically reserved for battlefield commands. You respond with the correct declension, or you don't, and either way, you're in trouble. History class is next. Taught by a retired colonel whose beard is a registered national landmark. He insists on daily recitations of monarchs past, their various glories. And, should you dare to forget a single date, the punishments meted out are both creative and deeply inconvenient. Last week you had to write out the entire Magna Carta in cursive with a quill and a growing sense of resentment. Then there's mathematics, which in palace terms means advanced arithmetic, geometry, and the mysteries of double-entry bookkeeping. Your instructor, known for his frosty stare and tragic fondness for fractions, takes it personally if you get a sum wrong. You try to keep up, counting on your fingers under the table, while he monologues about the dangers of decimal points and the horrors of unbalanced ledgers. If you're unlucky, he'll launch into the family's actual budget, which is less lesson and more cautionary tale. And let's not forget the practical arts. Penmanship is judged not by legibility, but by how convincingly you can forge your parent's signature in a pinch. Dancing lessons are held in the long gallery, where a disapproving music master glares from behind a grand piano. You practice waltzes, curtsies, and the subtle art of not collapsing from boredom. Sometimes your partner is a sibling. Sometimes it's a chair with a ribbon. Either way, you are expected to display poise, grace, and an enduring hatred for the poker. Languages form a critical part of your royal curriculum. French is required, German is expected, and Italian is there just to keep you humble. You recite endless vocabulary lists while the governess corrects your accent and your posture at the same time. If you dare ask, "When will I ever need Hungarian?" you will be told about the incident of 1792 and sent to bed without pudding. Physical education exists too, but don't imagine fun. It's all fencing, archery, and calisthenics performed in the world's least comfortable trousers. A fencing master shouts at you to lunge with conviction, while the archery instructor quietly prays you never inherit anything sharper than a butter knife. Finally, there are lessons in etiquette, religion, and the nebulous subject of statecraft. These consist mostly of learning to sit up straight, memorize the names of obscure cousins, and repeat phrases like, "The crown is a sacred duty," until your tongue goes numb. By midday, you've survived a marathon of instruction, corrected your own grammar 9 times, and possibly picked up a useful skill like dodging thrown chalk. You emerge from the schoolroom dazed, overeducated, and desperately in need of a nap, or at the very least, a small rebellion. Royal learning, after all, is less about enlightenment and more about stamina. You'd think having brothers and sisters in a palace would be fun. Actually, it's closer to a Cold War with better costumes. Games end in accusations of cheating, hide and seek ends in 3 days of searching the East Wing, and someone always gets a pony, but never you. The palace is a breeding ground for petty competition. Everything is a contest, even breathing. Siblings tally up victories and slights with the efficiency of medieval accountants. Who sat closest to Queen Victoria at breakfast? Who got the last slice of currant cake? Who is mother's favourite this week? And who's in disgrace for leaving muddy footprints on the Persian rug? If you score a win, say, convincing the governess you didn't start the fight in the drawing room, you'd better savour it, because your brothers and sisters are already plotting your downfall. Games are meant to be a break from palace routine, but they quickly devolve into diplomatic incidents. Croquet in the garden becomes a strategic campaign. Alliances are formed, rules are bent, mallets mysteriously vanish, and at least one cousin always claims to have won on principle. Chess is a blood sport. Losing gracefully is considered a sign of weakness, and victory means holding the family bragging rights until someone accuses you of moving the bishop when nobody was looking. The stakes are high because there's so little real freedom. Being royal means you can't leave the grounds without a parade of chaperones, so you channel your ambition into winning at whatever you can. Marbles, card games, foot races through the gallery. The unofficial Palace Olympics are an endless series of competitions judged by bored aunts and sabotaged by siblings with a gift for plausible deniability. The winner gets a slightly larger piece of cake. Or, even better, the privilege of picking the evening's reading aloud, preferably something with as many difficult French names as possible, just to trip everyone up. Of course, not all the rivalry is loud. There's an art to palace-level passive aggression, a pointed compliment about your brother's unique taste in waistcoats, the subtle hiding of your sister's favorite hair ribbon, notes left on pillows, unsigned, but clearly penned by the only sibling who dots their eyes with angry circles. A glare across the dinner table says more than 1,000 words, especially if delivered during grace. Jealousy simmers beneath the surface, stoked by adult intervention. Why can't you be more like your brother? He's already memorized the family tree back to Alfred the Great. Your sister plays the pianoforte so beautifully. It's a shame about your clapping. No wonder the corridors echo with the sound of muffled arguments, slammed doors, and the delicate pitter-patter of someone sneaking into the library to switch out their report cards. There's always the issue of gifts. Royal birthdays and holidays are opportunities for one-upmanship. Who got the most elaborate present, whose dollhouse has real working gaslights, who received a pony, and whose surprise was a book on the virtues of humility. Presents are less about gratitude and more about keeping score, a physical reminder of who's currently in the ascendant and who's on the outs. Still, beneath all the squabbling, alliances, and strategic betrayals, there's a certain solidarity. No one else understands what it's like to be a royal kid in a fishbowl, watched by hundreds, judged by thousands, and never allowed to pick your own bedtime. Siblings might drive you mad, but they're also your best defense against palace boredom, nosy adults, and the perpetual threat of being forced to play charades with the Duke of York. And if you're lucky, you might just win tomorrow's game, or at least live to fight another round. Royal pets are a status symbol, and sometimes a full-time hazard. Dogs are treated better than some relatives. There's a parrot who swears in 3 languages, and a monkey who may or may not have bitten a visiting ambassador last Thursday. Palace life means living surrounded by creatures, both intentional and accidental. The royal dogs are everywhere. Spaniels, retrievers, terriers, each with its own staff, wardrobe, and occasionally more fans than the royal children. Each morning, a line of footmen parades them through the gardens, trailing after the Queen's favourite as if it were a 4-legged monarch. If a dog so much as sneezes, an entire veterinary council is summoned. You, meanwhile, are still waiting for someone to bring you your socks. The menagerie doesn't stop at dogs. Cats have their own territories, mostly consisting of velvet cushions and sunbeams in off-limits libraries. They accept affection on their own schedule, which is to say, almost never, unless there's cream involved. Officially, they catch palace mice. Unofficially, they supervise the kitchen and judge your choice of reading material. Then there are the birds. Carrier pigeons are maintained for official business, but mostly they serve as the world's most unreliable mailmen. Occasionally, a pigeon brings news of great importance. More often, it delivers a cryptic feather and a sense of vague disappointment. Parrots are popular, but dangerous. They're notorious for repeating family secrets at inopportune moments. Nothing quite spices up a royal dinner like your aunt's macaw loudly reciting the cook's opinions on the Prime Minister's trousers. Exotic pets come and go, depending on diplomatic gifts and the whims of royal children. There was the celebrated peacock, who lived in the West Courtyard until it chased a footman up a tree and caused an international incident with the French. At least one royal ancestor kept a pair of tortoises, who famously escaped the palace grounds and returned 6 years later, looking wiser and possibly plotting revolution. But the undisputed star of the palace zoo is the monkey. The monkey appears innocent at first, small, curious, and dressed in a miniature waistcoat. In practice, it is a furry missile of chaos. It once stole the royal tiara and hid it in the chimney, shredded a stack of important documents, and bit the ambassador's finger when he tried to offer it a grape. The staff lives in fear of monkey-related emergencies, and you suspect half the palace guards were hired specifically for their agility in primate pursuit. Of course, pets require care, and the job descriptions are as bizarre as the creatures themselves. There's a chief canine attendant, a mistress of parrots, and someone whose entire role is mouse prevention consultant. The pigeon handler keeps detailed logs of avian behavior, which is mostly a list of excuses for why your birthday invitation ended up on the roof instead of in the post. Not every animal is welcome. Mice and rats are considered intruders, though palace cats treat them like part of the decor. A family of hedgehogs once took up residence in the conservatory. Instead of being removed, they were knighted ceremonially and provided a saucer of cream, as per tradition. In the end, palace pets serve as loyal companions, sources of drama, and sometimes agents of pure anarchy. They break the monotony, ruffle feathers, sometimes literally, and offer the kind of unpredictable excitement even the Queen can't command. If you're ever lonely in the palace, just follow the trail of fur, feathers, and faintly chewed upholstery. You're bound to find something ready to make mischief, or at least to join you in plotting it. There's only one weather pattern that matters in Buckingham: Queen Victoria's mood. Is she smiling? All is well. Is she frowning? Cancel everything. Has she started writing in her diary? Hide. Victoria, the sun around which the royal universe orbits, is famously unpredictable. Her moods shape the rhythm of palace life more than the tides, the stock market, or the Prime Minister's gout. From the moment she enters the breakfast room, the temperature of the day is set. If she greets you with a cheerful good morning, it's as if every window in the palace opens at once, letting in fresh air and the possibility of scones. But if she arrives silent, eyes narrowed, lips pressed into the shape of disappointment, the entire household moves like it's tiptoeing across thin ice. Everyone has developed their own coping strategy. The footmen avoid direct eye contact and rehearse their apologies in advance. The butler polishes the silver twice as fast, just in case a spot is mistaken for insubordination. Even the corgis know to tread carefully. If the queen is cross, they find reasons to be busy elsewhere, possibly visiting the kitchens or hiding under the billiard table. The family isn't immune. Children are drilled in the fine art of reading the queen, a survival skill passed down through generations. If she sighs 3 times before breakfast, cancel all afternoon plans. If she hums, hope for a good day, unless it's in a minor key, which means you'll spend the evening listening to a stern lecture on duty, discipline, or the correct arrangement of antimacassars. Her diary is the most ominous omen of all. The Queen's daily writing is both catharsis and historical record, and nothing good ever comes from being mentioned by name. If you spot her retreating with pen and ink, everyone in the palace holds their breath. The next day, you'll hear whispers in the corridor. You made the diary. Was it for the pudding incident or the embroidery debacle? No one knows for sure, and no one dares ask. Mood swings aren't confined to mornings. They sweep through the palace at all hours, often without warning. An afternoon stroll may become an impromptu parade of grievances. An innocent question about the weather can spiral into a dramatic soliloquy on the decline of modern manners. You soon learn the difference between attentively listening and strategically fading into the wallpaper. Either could save your social standing. Staff meetings are conducted with military precision when Victoria is displeased. Any perceived slight, a crooked tablecloth, an undercooked egg, a poorly worded address, becomes the subject of an inquisition. There are murmurs about writing a new set of guidelines, but everyone knows it's useless. The only real rule is don't upset the Queen, and even that is mostly wishful thinking. And yet, when the Queen is in a good mood, the palace transforms. Rules relax, laughter echoes down the halls, and someone may even risk a joke about the French. On these rare days, Victoria's smile is contagious. Gifts are distributed, meals last longer, and you catch glimpses of the Queen as a person, not just a monarch, fond of her dogs, sentimental about her children, and capable of a kindness that lingers long after the candles are out. The lesson is simple. The Queen's mood is the weather of the royal world. You can try to predict it, prepare for it, and occasionally enjoy it. But above all, you must respect its power. In Buckingham Palace, everyone dances to the rhythm of Victoria's heart and prays for sunshine. An afternoon walk isn't relaxing. It's a parade, complete with hats large enough to require their own postal code, and at least 2 relatives trying to out-dainty each other on the gravel. Bonus: you might get scolded for breathing too loudly. Every day, the royal household prepares for the grand ritual known as the afternoon walk. Unlike a normal person, you can't simply slip out the back door and enjoy a quiet ramble. No, this is a highly choreographed event, 1 part military exercise, 1 part fashion show, and 1 part competitive endurance test. The route is meticulously planned by a combination of gardeners, security, and whichever aunt is currently obsessed with rose bushes. It begins with an announcement. A footman appears, bowing low and in tones. The family will promenade at 4 o'clock. This is not a suggestion. From that moment, everyone scrambles to locate gloves, parasols, and hats. The hats are truly a spectacle. Wide-brimmed, flower, bedecked, and supported by enough internal architecture to survive a hurricane. You suspect at least one has a secret message embroidered underneath. Perhaps send help or beware the bees. Lining up for the walk is an exercise in hierarchy. The eldest leads, the youngest trails behind, and everyone else negotiates for a spot with the least mud or the best chance of overhearing gossip. The queen is flanked by dogs, children, and a rotating cast of foreign dignitaries. Every step you take is carefully observed, not just by your family, but by the household staff, gardeners, and at least one painter hiding in the shrubbery, sketching for the inevitable, charmingly candid portrait. Conversation is supposed to be light and uplifting. In practice, it's a minefield. Any comment about the weather risks triggering a lecture on proper attire for changing seasons. If you mention flowers, be prepared for a detailed history of the palace daffodils, delivered by a cousin who believes she is part tulip. If you try to walk in silence, someone will prod you about your posture, your progress in Italian, or why you look so very peaky today. Walking itself is no simple stroll. The path is raked and rolled, but it still manages to be uneven in the exact places that attract the least practical footwear. At least one person will trip. There is always a race to see who can maintain a ladylike pace while not losing circulation in their ankles. If the queen decides to set a brisk tempo, everyone else must keep up or risk being left behind, which is both a logistical embarrassment and a social demotion for at least a week. The royal dogs, meanwhile, add a level of chaos. Spaniels dart after squirrels, retrievers decide the pond is more interesting than the roses, and once in a while the corgi disappears entirely, only to be found half an hour later, having joined a cricket match with the gardeners. All of this is carefully ignored by the dignitaries, who are busy pretending that they too find afternoon walks exhilarating. The promenade ends with a perfectly timed return to the palace steps, where hats are adjusted, gloves are checked for dirt, and everyone tries to look as if they haven't just run a small marathon. Someone makes a polite remark about the invigorating air. You smile, say something about the beauty of tradition, and try to hide the blister forming on your left foot. In the end, the afternoon walk is less about fresh air and more about proving you can survive a mile of small talk, mud, and millinery. Victory is making it home with dignity, and your hat still upright. If you feel unwell, prepare for a visit from the royal physician. This means leeches, mercury, mysterious ointments, and a lecture about nervous disposition. Side effects include spontaneous fainting and a deep mistrust of anyone with a stethoscope. Medical care for a Victorian royal is less about getting better and more about bravely enduring the world's strangest remedies. No matter your ailment, sore throat, upset stomach, existential malaise, the doctor arrives with a valise brimming with bottles, powders, and the kind of optimism only seen in people who never have to take their own medicine. You might be suffering from a slight chill, but you're about to be treated like you've survived the Black Death, and not in a good way. Step 1. The diagnosis. It involves a great deal of tapping, prodding, and the doctor squinting thoughtfully at your tongue. He'll consult a hefty medical book. Flip to a chapter called Distempers of the Noble Class, and declare you to be suffering from an excess of humours. The solution, naturally, is to restore your bodily balance, which is code for let's get the leeches. Leeches are the Swiss Army knife of Victorian medicine. Too much energy? Leeches. Too little energy? Leeches. Bad dreams? Leeches, but with a warm compress. You try not to look as the physician produces a jar of glistening worms and affixes them to your forearm, reassuring you that Her Majesty herself swears by them. He claims you'll feel better in no time, but all you feel is deeply betrayed and a little light-headed. If leeches don't work, and they never do, then it's time for more advanced treatments. Mercury is a favorite, administered in a chalky syrup that promises to invigorate the blood while almost certainly rearranging your internal organs. If you protest, the doctor waves away your concerns with a reminder that medical science is advancing rapidly. You suspect this means the last patient survived long enough to write a letter of complaint. Should you be truly unfortunate, you'll be prescribed a poultice or ointment made from whatever herbs happen to be growing in the Queen's kitchen garden. The recipe is a secret passed down by generations of slightly unhinged physicians, guaranteed to stain your best nightclothes and do nothing for your fever. There is also the tonic, an unholy mix of quinine, alcohol, and whatever else was left over after cleaning the medicine cabinet. You take a sip and wonder if anyone has ever actually recovered. Mental health is handled with even less subtlety. Any sign of anxiety, sadness, or reluctance to attend another ball is labeled melancholia. Treatments include brisk walks, cold baths, and inspirational readings from the Book of Common Prayer. If you admit to having dreams, the doctor prescribes fresh air and no cheese before bed, which is about as effective as shouting at clouds. Visits from the doctor attract a curious audience. Governesses offering conflicting advice, anxious relatives consulting prayer books, and the palace chaplain lurking nearby, just in case things take a turn. Even the dog seems to sense that something dreadful is happening, hiding under the chaise lounge at the first whiff of camphor. Eventually, after much fuss and not a little drama, you are pronounced on the mend. This means you're still alive and willing to promise you'll take your medicine. You won't. You're sent back into the world, paler, slightly sticky, and twice as suspicious of anyone in a white coat. In royal circles, recovery is less about health and more about surviving the treatment. If you make it, you've earned your place in the family portrait, provided the leech marks have faded by then. The palace runs on letters, official invitations, love notes, death threats from distant cousins, and very unsubtle gossip. If you miss a post, you might accidentally start a war with Denmark, or worse, miss the latest scandal about Lady Wigglesworth's poodle. Every morning, the royal mail arrives in a flurry of crested envelopes and frantic footmen. Each piece is sorted with the seriousness of a diplomatic crisis. There are invitations to balls, polite requests for appearances, stern reminders from charities, and, of course, the endless stream of correspondence from relatives too far away to be managed in person but too close to ignore. You suspect half of Europe is kept together by nothing but postage and passive aggression. Managing your mail is a job in itself. An entire wing of the palace is devoted to the sorting, storing, and sometimes accidentally misplacing of letters. A special secretary reads anything deemed potentially scandalous, highlighting questionable passages and, on occasion, censoring with scissors and the utmost discretion. Your official reply stack grows taller by the hour, with every dear esteemed relation note requiring the exact right blend of warmth, humility, and plausible deniability. Of course, not all letters are for public eyes. Secret notes are passed between siblings, slipped under bedroom doors, and tucked into the folds of hats. If you're lucky, you intercept a juicy tidbit before the housekeeper does. Sometimes it's a love letter, always written in code, just in case the wrong person reads it. More often, it's a cleverly disguised insult about someone's embroidery skills or a warning that the governess is on the warpath over ink stains. Gossip moves through the palace with the efficiency of a telegraph wire, even if it's powered by footmen instead of electricity. Everyone has their sources, maids with sharp ears, gardeners who overhear conversations while pruning the roses, and that one under butler who seems to be everywhere at once. If you want to know who snuck extra pudding at dinner, who's in trouble for borrowing the Queen's fan, or who was spotted crying behind the potted palms, you ask the right person and pay in chocolate or promises of future secrets. Official business is no less dramatic. Diplomatic letters require consultation with advisors, 3 drafts, and a final signature from someone whose handwriting is only legible if you squint. If a missive goes astray, expect a formal apology, a new round of negotiations, and possibly a small land war. Even invitations to tea are strategic. Accepting or declining can shift entire social alliances, and the wrong RSVP might see you relegated to the card table for months. The art of letter writing is taught early and corrected often. You learn to open with elaborate pleasantries, "My dearest, most beloved, and undoubtedly misunderstood cousin," to sprinkle in a few lines about health and the weather, and to close with vague promises about visiting soon. Anything too direct is considered suspicious. So every message is wrapped in at least 3 layers of polite ambiguity. For the truly adventurous, there's cryptography, codes, invisible ink, and family ciphers that date back to the Tudors. These are mostly used to arrange midnight snacks or to mock your older brother without the risk of being grounded for life. Occasionally, an intercepted note will cause a minor crisis, prompting a new round of family lectures about the dangers of loose lips and leaky pens. In a world where privacy is rare and curiosity is endless, letters are both shield and sword. They carry affection, animosity, and everything in between. So, you write, you read, and you gossip. Because in the Victorian palace, the pen is mightier than the scone, and twice as likely to cause a scandal. Dinner is both a meal and a test of willpower. There are 16 forks, 33 knives, and not one item that tastes like chicken. You're watched constantly by people who live for etiquette errors. Don't drop your napkin. It's basically treason. The evening meal in the palace is a full-scale military operation disguised as fine dining. Hours before anyone sits, the dining room is prepared with the precision of a coronation. The table stretches to the horizon, covered in linen so crisp it could slice a finger. Each place setting is an architectural achievement. Rows of polished silver, glasses arranged like a fleet, napkins folded into swans, peacocks, or, on ambitious days, a complete rendering of the palace itself. Seating is determined by rank, favor, and whatever mysterious logic governs royal pecking orders. You find your place by following a maze of place cards and seating charts, and woe betide anyone who ends up between 2 elderly aunts with opposing views on the Crimean War. If you do, prepare for an evening of passive-aggressive sherry sipping and competing tales of medical ailments. As you settle into your chair, the rules begin. Sit up straight. Keep your elbows in. Smile, but not too widely. Make polite conversation with your neighbors, unless one is a visiting archduchess, in which case you should pretend to be slightly less intelligent than you actually are. Your napkin is placed on your lap with solemnity. Dropping it is a scandal on par with losing Gibraltar. If it happens, a footman will appear to rescue you, but everyone will remember. Courses arrive in a never-ending parade. There's soup, which must be sipped away from you to avoid soup slosh. There's fish, to be eaten with the fish fork, not to be confused with the oyster fork, which makes an appearance only if oysters are served, and even then, using it correctly is less about function and more about not being written out of the will. Meat courses come next, each more elaborately sourced than the last. Vegetables appear in arrangements so ornate you're not sure whether to eat them or admire them as still life. Conversation is as carefully curated as the tableware. Topics include the weather, minor royal engagements, the virtues of punctuality, and, if you're desperate, admiring the centerpieces, which are often so tall they obscure your view of the opposite side. If you attempt to mention politics, scandal, or the possibility that you're already full, you'll receive a look from your grandmother that could curdle the cream. Dessert is both a reward and another test. There are tiny cakes, sculpted fruit, and puddings with names so elaborate you're convinced someone is making them up. A dessert spoon is provided, but use it only for the proper dish. Otherwise, you risk triggering a silent but deadly wave of collective disapproval. As the meal winds down, there's one last hurdle. The toast. Glasses are raised, speeches are made, and you must look sufficiently moved without actually spilling anything on your collar. The toasts can last longer than the soup course, and by the time it's over, you've smiled so much your cheeks ache and your resolve has dissolved. Finally, the Queen rises, signaling the end. Chairs scrape back, guests bow and curtsy, and the evening dissolves into a gentle shuffle toward the drawing room. You survived. No small feat. As you escape to your room, you dream of midnight snacks and eating with your hands. But for now, you've passed the dinner gauntlet, silverware still intact, dignity only slightly frayed. Once a year, you must sit for a portrait. This involves hours of holding your breath, pretending to look majestic, and ignoring the fact that the painter is almost certainly mocking your ears. The final result? You look like a haunted potato in a crown. Portrait day begins early and ominous. Word spreads through the palace like a cold draft. The artist arrives at 9. Suddenly, everyone is on high alert. Dressers debate which sash best communicates regal yet approachable. Hairdressers descend, armed with combs, pins and hair oil that smells faintly of old marzipan and disappointment. The wardrobe team insists on every conceivable accessory, brooches, medals, and, if your luck is especially bad, a ceremonial sword so heavy it could anchor a ship. There's no breakfast. Food risks, crumbs and stains. You're packed into your best frock or uniform and sent to the Great Hall, where the artist, half celebrity, half interrogator, waits with a palette and an unsettling smile. The painter sizes you up like a tailor measuring for a coffin. Sit, he intones, as if you're a particularly difficult dog. You're arranged in a position that feels vaguely illegal. One shoulder is turned for character. Your chin is elevated for authority, and your left hand is strategically placed on a velvet cushion that never existed in real life. Don't move, the artist says. And above all, don't blink. Blinking, you soon discover, is considered a personal failing. Minutes pass. Then hours. Your foot falls asleep. Your right eye twitches. Someone coughs in the gallery, and the painter tuts in disapproval, as if you caused the noise by sheer force of boredom. Every time you sag or sigh, a servant appears to fluff your hair or adjust your medals. The artist, meanwhile, debates with his assistant about whether your expression is sovereign enough or merely fatigued. You try to hold a look that's both dignified and only mildly terrified. Children and pets are sometimes included in the scene for family values. This means posing next to a squirming toddler in a sailor suit or a spaniel determined to chew the scenery, sometimes literally. If you're lucky, your dog will sit perfectly still, eyes fixed on eternity. If not, there will be paw prints on your lap and a smear of drool preserved for future generations. By midday, your patience is gone. The artist asks for just another hour. You contemplate whether portraiture is a subtle form of royal punishment. The windows are closed to avoid drafts. Candles flicker and smoke, adding the scent of desperation to the air. You stare at a fixed point, attempting to look wise, or at least not cross-eyed. All the while, the painter occasionally mutters things like, "Let's try for a hint of melancholy," as if sorrow is a necessary accessory. At last, you're dismissed. Muscles aching, face frozen, you stagger away, vowing never to smile again. The artist promises to finish within the season, though you suspect you'll be immortalized with an ear bigger than your dreams and a nose reminiscent of a regrettable ancestor. When the unveiling finally arrives, the family gathers with forced enthusiasm. The portrait is revealed, and everyone pretends you look splendid, though later, in private, the reviews are mixed. The painting is hung in a corridor where it will outlive you, baffling future visitors. "Who's that?" they'll ask. No one knows, but the ears are magnificent, royal portraits. Proof that history isn't kind, but oil paint is forever. Beneath the polite exterior is a boiling pit of scandal, secret romances, letters gone astray, bad poetry hidden in desk drawers. Everyone has a secret, and everyone knows everyone else's. Blackmail is just another Tuesday. On the surface, palace life is a performance of perfect manners. There are curtsies, polite smiles, and endless discussions about weather and wallpaper. But just below this porcelain veneer, intrigue simmers. Every corridor whispers. Every housemaid is a messenger, every valet a possible witness, every cousin a walking archive of family shame. If a letter is left unattended, it will be read. If a door is left ajar, someone will lurk nearby, listening for the faintest hint of a scandal worth trading for a better seat at dinner. Romance, of course, is the main course at this feast of secrets. You're expected to marry for duty, but flirt for survival. Secret notes are slipped under plates, rendezvous arranged in forbidden alcoves, and, should the stars align, a meaningful glance exchanged during vespers. Occasionally, a particularly bold suitor will attempt a midnight serenade. This almost always ends badly, with a dog barking, a window slammed, and an emergency family meeting called at dawn to discuss appropriate expressions of affection. Love letters are both currency and ammunition, penned by moonlight, sprinkled with perfume, and written in a code so obvious only the sender and the entire palace staff could possibly understand it. If intercepted, the letter is a weapon to be deployed during the next round of sibling negotiations or held in reserve for a future blackmail emergency. It's not uncommon for a note intended for a beloved to accidentally end up in the hands of a grandmother, a governess, or, in the worst-case scenario, the family parrot, who will then recite it during dinner in perfect, mortifying clarity. But romance is only the beginning. Blackmail flourishes in this environment. Did you hear about the time Lady Agatha was caught playing cards for money? Or that mysterious incident involving Uncle Rupert, a jar of pickled onions, and the bishop's hat? The palace runs on leverage. Even minor missteps are filed away for future use. The housekeeper knows who broke the vase in the blue drawing room. The under-butler knows who sneaks jam tarts before supper. And if anyone claims to be above it all, they're either lying or haven't been caught yet. Bad poetry is the palace's best-kept secret. In every drawer, under every mattress, between the pages of the Book of Common Prayer, there lurk verses of adolescent longing, epic tragedy, and occasional limericks about the family's many dogs. These poems are always intended to remain private, but somehow, inevitably, they surface, recited by siblings during hide-and-seek, discovered by nannies, or accidentally read aloud during family prayer. Embarrassment is guaranteed. Forgiveness is negotiable. No scandal is ever fully private. Even the walls have opinions, and the staff could write novels, though they know better than to publish. Gossip travels faster than carriages, gaining detail and drama with every telling. Was that a cough or a secret signal? Did someone really see Cousin George sneaking out of the conservatory at midnight? Or was it just the monkey again? No one is ever entirely sure. In this world, secrets are survival. Everyone is plotting, hiding, confessing, and denying, sometimes all in the same afternoon. The only thing more dangerous than having a secret is not having one, because then everyone suspects you of something far worse. So, if you ever find yourself wandering the palace halls, mind your letters, guard your poetry, and never trust a parrot. The real history of royalty is written in secrets, and occasionally, very bad verse. As the palace quiets down, you're led through a half-hour ritual of prayers. Teeth cleaning with charcoal, yum, and being tucked in by a servant with hands colder than the North Sea. Don't forget to check for assassins under the bed. Again, evening in the palace is less about winding down and more about running a gauntlet of nightly superstitions, strict routines, and lingering anxiety. Bedtime begins with a subtle announcement, usually a grandmotherly figure, sighing deeply and declaring, "It's time for the evening routine." This triggers a parade of servants who appear, ghost-like, to dim lamps, straighten cushions, and close every curtain in the building. Privacy, even at night, is a rare and fleeting luxury. The process starts in the dressing room. You're stripped of the day's many layers, emerging from your uniform or corset like a very tired butterfly. Your night clothes are already aired and folded, laid out with surgical precision on the bed. A valet stands ready with slippers that are exactly one size too small and a dressing gown monogrammed so many times you start to forget your actual name. Next comes the dreaded hygiene ritual. The water basin arrives, barely lukewarm, along with a cake of tooth powder, an ashy, grainy concoction that claims to polish teeth, but mostly provides an opportunity to gag theatrically in front of the staff. Hair is brushed out with stiff bristles, each stroke removing not just tangles but any hope of falling asleep before midnight. A housemaid stands by with a comb, ready to tackle knots with the gentle touch of a medieval torturer. Then it's time for prayers. Kneeling cushions appear as if by magic, and you're joined by a rotating cast of relatives and chaplains. You recite familiar lines by candlelight, half whispering hopes for good dreams and half pleading that you're not assigned to the coldest guest room again. The prayers are long and thorough, covering everyone from the Queen to the royal goldfish. On especially anxious nights, you're encouraged to add an extra prayer for the safe return of missing socks. Before bed, there's the final security check. Childhood tales of assassins and burglars have left their mark, so a footman must inspect every closet, look under the bed, and, if it's a particularly stormy night, peer behind the curtains with exaggerated caution. Of course, this ritual only adds to the sense of foreboding. Now you're convinced. The shadow by the wardrobe is not a coat, but a disgruntled ancestor. For extra safety, you're handed a small bell to ring in case of emergencies, which you will never use, except for that one memorable night when the cat leapt on your pillow and nearly ended a dynasty. Tucked into bed at last, you're surrounded by so many blankets and counterpanes, it's a minor miracle if you can move at all. A servant gently extinguishes the last candle, whispering, "Good night, Your Highness," and you're left alone with your thoughts, the rustle of silk, and the endless symphony of creaking floorboards. The palace may be grand, but the pipes clank, the wood groans, and the occasional gust of wind makes you wonder if the roof is still attached. Falling asleep is not guaranteed. There's always the possibility of a midnight thunderstorm, a relative snoring down the hall, or the relentless suspicion that you forgot to say goodnight to the portrait of Queen Victoria in the stairwell, who, rumour has it, does not take such slights lightly. Still, you pull the blankets to your chin, clutch your emergency bell, and hope for peaceful dreams. In the end, royal bedtime is equal parts comfort and paranoia. The prayers may be soothing, but the floorboards are always suspicious. And sleep, as ever, is a privilege you have to earn, one night at a time. Sleep does not come easy. Guards patrol the hallways, shadows lurk, and everyone is convinced the palace is haunted by a former queen who is deeply unimpressed by your life choices. Also, you can't sleep on your left side, doctor's orders. As the palace slips into darkness, a whole new cast of characters emerges. The official night watch begins their rounds, uniforms crisp, boots polished, and expressions that say, I have not blinked since Tuesday. Their job is to keep the palace safe from intruders, rebellious relatives, and occasionally raccoons with a taste for imported marmalade. They march past your bedroom door every quarter hour, keys jangling, swords rattling, and the faint clink of medals earned in battles nobody remembers. The guards are not alone. Rumor has it the palace is home to at least 3 ghosts, each with their own schedule. There's the Grey Lady, who sighs mournfully near the linen closets. The singing butler, who allegedly hums God Save the Queen at midnight, and old Queen Adelaide herself, known to appear in the grand staircase whenever anyone is running late for morning prayers. Each family member has a favourite haunting. Some even claim to have seen a spectral corgi, still chasing the cat it never caught in life. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, every shadow seems more threatening at night. The flicker of candlelight can turn a coat rack into a highwayman, and the wind rattling a window is obviously a coded message from a distant ancestor. You try to remind yourself that you're surrounded by layers of security, dozens of guards, multiple locked doors, and a hallway filled with ceremonial armor. Still, you keep your emergency bell within reach, just in case. For the royals, there are unique nighttime challenges beyond the supernatural. The pipes in the palace walls moan and groan. The floorboards pop, and somewhere down the corridor, a clock chimes the hour with the enthusiasm of a banshee. None of this helps your insomnia. But the alternative, pitch darkness and silence, is somehow even worse. And then there's gout. It's the royal malady, a badge of privilege, and, unfortunately, poor diet. It tends to flare up just as you're finally drifting off, turning your big toe into a small volcano of pain. The family doctor recommends elevation, cool compresses, and positive thoughts. None of these are especially useful at 2 a.m. when you're trying to balance your aching foot on a pile of royal cushions while ghosts and guards wage their eternal battle outside your door. If you do manage to fall asleep, it's a light, restless slumber. The echo of footsteps, the crackle of ancient timbers, and the fear that your siblings are plotting a midnight prank keep you teetering on the edge of wakefulness. Sometimes you dream of a peaceful cottage, far away from duty, expectation, and indoor thunderstorms caused by faulty plumbing. More often, you dream of being late for breakfast, late for prayers, late for whatever mysterious appointment seems to require immediate attention at dawn. Morning comes whether you've rested or not. The guards finish their rounds, the ghosts retreat to their hiding spots, and the family nurse appears to check your pulse, your temperature, and whether you're still snoring in a way unbecoming of royalty. You rub your eyes, stretch your gouty foot, and listen for the footsteps that signal the palace is awake again. Night in the palace, a time of vigilance, restless sleep, and the occasional ghostly side-eye. It's no wonder everyone looks so tired at breakfast. You finally drift off, only to be plagued by nightmares of etiquette mistakes, giant hats, and a vengeful butler. Occasionally, you dream of eating an entire loaf of bread without permission. Scandalous. In the rare moments when palace life actually allows for sleep, your mind does not rest easy. No matter how many prayers are recited, how much lavender is sprinkled on your pillow, or how tightly your curtains are drawn, your dreams are as elaborate and unpredictable as the royal family tree. It's as if all the anxieties that fill your days, protocol, scandal, missed Latin homework, wait until the darkness falls, then parade through your unconscious, wearing tiny crowns and criticizing your posture. Most royal dreams are anxiety-fueled theatre. The most common involves showing up to breakfast in nothing but your monogrammed socks, greeted by a table full of horrified relatives and an unimpressed Queen Victoria. You try to explain, but your words come out in flawless Hungarian, a language you were assured you'd never actually need. Someone hands you a fork, and you realize you're meant to recite the entire list of British monarchs while buttering a scone, all under the watchful gaze of your ancestors, painted and very judgmental. Etiquette nightmares are the stuff of legend. There's the one where you use the fish knife for pudding and are promptly banished to the nursery for a year. Or the recurring terror of curtsying with the wrong foot, knocking over a candelabrum, and accidentally inventing a new family scandal. Sometimes, you dream you've forgotten to RSVP to an important ball, only to discover it's being held in your own bedroom, and the guests have brought their own folding chairs. Then there are the dreams that tip over into the surreal. Hats play a suspiciously large role. You wander endless hallways, chased by a flock of flying bonnets, or find yourself crowned with a pastry so large it blocks out the sundae. The butler grows 10 feet tall and chases you with a napkin, demanding to know why you failed to polish your shoes before prayers. In one memorable dream, the palace corgis have formed a secret society and insist you memorize the secret handshake, which involves a lot of barking and confusion. Food is a recurring theme. You dream of lavish banquets with endless dessert carts, only to find that every dish tastes of disappointment and unripe pears. The greatest fantasy of all, sitting alone in the pantry with a loaf of bread, eating as much as you want with your hands, crumbs falling without a single glare from the head housekeeper. The closest you'll ever come to bliss. Sometimes your dreams are just pure nonsense. A ballroom fills with dancing hedgehogs. The Queen gives you a medal for services to the prevention of unnecessary sneezing. Your siblings sprout peacock feathers and squabble over the best sunbeam. You wake up with a distinct sense that none of it makes sense, but all of it is somehow true. Waking from these dreams is its own challenge. You surface slowly, unsure if you're still required to recite the entire royal family tree, or if it was all a test. The morning staff arrives, too cheerful by half, and you look around for evidence of giant hats or pastry crowns, just in case. The sense of relief is real, but so is the underlying dread that, one day, you might actually commit a dessert spoon scandal while fully awake. In the palace, dreams are both refuge and rehearsal, absurd, anxiety-riddled, and just a little bit sweet. They remind you that even in sleep, you're still royal and still never quite safe from the next etiquette disaster. Coughing in the palace is a national emergency. The doctor is called, the curtains are drawn, and someone writes to Parliament to let them know you sneezed. Somewhere, a cousin in Hanover is already measuring your drapes. It all starts innocently enough, a tickle in the throat, a discreet sniffle, or the faintest of sneezes. But in the royal household, there's no such thing as a minor symptom. Illness is not a private affair. It's an event that unfolds like a Shakespearean tragedy. The moment you cough, 3 people appear with hot water bottles, 6 different tonics, and at least one shawl crocheted by a distant aunt who claims she can cure anything but common sense. First comes the diagnosis, conducted with much fanfare. The royal physician sweeps in with his bag of horrors, thermometer, stethoscope, and a lengthy questionnaire about your recent consumption of unripe pears. The entire family gathers in the corridor, peering through the slightly open door and whispering dramatic updates. He looks peaky. She's sweating. Is that a rash or just bad lighting? At least one sibling claims they felt unwell first, setting off a competitive round of theatrical coughing and well-timed swooning. Treatment is no less dramatic. Out come the poultices, compresses, and questionable herbal concoctions. The royal apothecary recommends a mixture of quinine, licorice, and whatever was left at the bottom of the medicine drawer. Servants boil water, steep teas, and deliver trays of dry toast with the solemnity of a peace offering. At least 3 relatives will appear with unsolicited advice. Try fresh air, try hot gin, try not being ill at all. Privacy evaporates. The Queen visits, offering advice in the form of stern warnings about the dangers of letting the cold air in. A chaplain arrives to offer prayers. The family historian lurks, poised to record your symptoms for posterity, in case your bout of the sniffles is later blamed for a minor diplomatic incident. No cough goes undocumented. You are never left alone. Someone is always hovering, checking your temperature, dabbing your brow, or placing another, even heavier, quilt on your already overheated body. Rumors spiral. Before you know it, stories about your illness reach every corner of the palace. Did you catch it from a foreign dignitary? Was it the undercooked turnips? Is it a subtle protest against etiquette lessons? Siblings speculate about who will inherit your responsibilities should you succumb. The staff wonders aloud if they, too, are coming down with something and begin wearing scarves indoors as a precaution. If your illness lasts longer than a day, things escalate. Newspapers print speculative updates. Parliament is informed, and someone inevitably blames the French. All non-essential palace activities are postponed. Portrait sittings are cancelled. Even the royal pets are kept at a respectful distance. You are visited by so many well-wishers, relatives, doctors, diplomats. You begin to long for the sweet release of a quarantine that actually involves solitude. Recovery is slow and highly supervised. The moment you show the slightest improvement, a delegation of family members arrives to congratulate you, each with their own story of a much worse illness they survived at your age. As you sip weak tea and try to breathe without causing alarm, you realize that in the palace, illness is both a performance and a legacy. When you finally return to daily life, you're greeted like a returning war hero. The saga of your cough will be retold for years, cited as the reason for everything from policy changes to missed parties. Royal illness, part melodrama, part public event, all very exhausting. Every royal has a secret hobby. Stamp collecting, beetle collecting, collecting tiny porcelain dogs, or just collecting other people's secrets. It's less about the hobby, more about having something to do while you avoid state business. You might imagine that the palace is a hive of meaningful activity at all hours. But the truth is, between all the parades, meals, and etiquette disasters, there is an extraordinary amount of downtime. Royals are discouraged from wandering the city unescorted or trying their hand at anything truly useful. Instead, they are encouraged, by tradition, boredom, or sheer desperation, to take up hobbies. Not ordinary pastimes, mind you, but the kind that require a special room, an annual budget, and a staff trained in delicate handling. Take stamp collecting, for instance. It is not just a way to pass a rainy afternoon, it's a competitive sport. Rare stamps are procured from distant lands, catalogued in books with gilded edges, and occasionally shown off to foreign dignitaries who pretend to be impressed. Heated debates erupt over misprinted penny blacks, while staff are dispatched across Europe to track down that elusive Albanian commemorative issue. It's possible more royal energy is spent organizing stamp albums than organizing the government. Insect collecting is another favorite. Butterflies and beetles are displayed in glass cases along palace corridors, arranged by color, size, and ability to alarm unsuspecting guests. The royal entomologist is a fixture at court, equally skilled in soothing delicate nerves and identifying moths that have gone rogue in the linen closets. No one is quite sure how the collection began, but it's rumored to have started as a polite way to deal with pests before palace cats took over. Porcelain dogs are a specialty for certain aunts and cousins. These tiny creatures line shelves, mantelpieces, and, occasionally, the stairs, turning a midnight snack run into an obstacle course of delicate, unblinking canine figurines. Each one is named, catalogued, and dusted daily by a staff member who secretly despises ceramics. Gifts of porcelain dogs are both a compliment and a challenge, since etiquette demands that you display every single one, regardless of personal taste or allergies. The real hobby, though, is collecting secrets. The palace is an ecosystem of whispered confidences, hidden notes, and discreet observations. Some royals keep detailed diaries, others compile dossiers worthy of a minor intelligence agency. It is entirely possible to trade a year's worth of scandalous information for an extra helping of dessert at dinner. Siblings keep mental scoreboards, and the housekeeper is rumored to know more state secrets than the Prime Minister. There is an unspoken agreement that all information gathered can and will be used at the next family argument. Other hobbies emerge and fade with fashion and the available budget. Shell art, pressed flowers, calligraphy, building elaborate ships in bottles, only to have them accidentally launched by an enthusiastic corgi. There was a brief, disastrous experiment with breeding racing snails, which ended with the snails escaping into the conservatory and launching a small rebellion among the gardeners. These hobbies serve several purposes. They provide entertainment, help fill the endless afternoons, and, most importantly, offer a safe refuge from the perils of palace politics. You can hide for hours in the stamp room, pretending to be deeply engrossed in Philately, while actually eavesdropping on the footmen arguing about pudding. You may never use your porcelain dog collection for anything more than gathering dust, but at least it gives you something to do besides embroidering more handkerchiefs for state gifts. In the end, royal hobbies are less about passion and more about survival. Collect what you will, stamps, secrets, or snails, because sometimes the only way to keep your sanity is to have something absurdly pointless to care about. Congratulations, you survived another night. Time to do it all again. With new scandals, new obligations, and the same old wallpaper. You may be royalty, but even you can't escape the existential dread of the eternal royal breakfast. The sun creeps over London, filtered through heavy velvet curtains and the faint whiff of last night's beeswax polish. In the distance, the palace bells toll, less a cheerful greeting, more a dire warning that another royal day has begun. You lie in bed, cocooned in 10 layers of monogrammed linen, already dreading the parade of servants that will shortly invade your chamber. The only thing colder than the marble floor is the realization that breakfast is, once again, non-negotiable. The morning routine begins as if on cue. Footsteps echo down the corridor. A maid knocks, then enters with a curtsy so precise it could have been timed with a metronome. She brings the first round of essentials, hot water, a fresh towel, and a selection of combs, as if the fate of the monarchy rests on your parting. Somewhere in the hallway, a valet quietly debates the ethical implications of whether to choose the blue waistcoat or the slightly more regal blue waistcoat. You contemplate hiding under the bed, but the palace dog is already there, snoring contentedly on a silk pillow. Dressing is as elaborate as ever, involving half the household staff and a running commentary from a governess who seems to believe that your left sock holds the key to national stability. As layers are added, shirt, vest, trousers, sash, jacket, and the ever-present ceremonial pin, you become less a person and more a royal art installation. Someone in the corner debates the proper hat for morning appearances. You quietly hope for a helmet. Breakfast awaits, a table so long you need a telescope to see the orange juice. Etiquette abounds. Knives, forks, spoons, and the dreaded kipper. Someone is already in trouble for using the wrong napkin. Conversation hovers between strained and conspiratorial. Siblings swap glances and whisper about last night's dreams, the possibility of afternoon rain, or which aunt might faint at prayers. The butler glides by with a silver pot of tea, managing to look both judgmental and faintly amused. The day ahead is mapped out by a master of ceremonies who recites your obligations with the enthusiasm of a tax auditor. Morning lessons, afternoon walk, evening dinner, and at least one scheduled opportunity for minor public humiliation. In between, there are always small surprises: an unexpected visitor, a pigeon in the library, a distant cousin writing to request just a little help with their debts. You steel yourself for another cycle of ritual and routine. Will today bring scandal or merely tedium? Perhaps another secret will be uncovered, another hobby adopted, another royal portrait painted in unflattering lighting. Perhaps you'll survive etiquette class without incident, or, failing that, at least make it through lunch without launching a bread roll at the Duke of Norfolk. As the palace comes fully awake, so do its dramas. Hidden letters, secret romances, urgent debates about the correct shade of ribbon for the Queen's hat. Through it all, you persevere, because that is the royal way. You do not get to quit. You do not get to take a sick day. You get up, get dressed, and try not to trip over the corgi. So here you are. Another day, another crown, another round of splendor and suffering. And as you brace for impact, you can't help but wonder, is it all worth it? Probably not, but it does make for an interesting breakfast. Hair in the Victorian palace isn't just hair. It's a full-time job and a family curse. Yours is teased, brushed, oiled, pinned, braided, and occasionally attacked by a team of specialists wielding combs like medieval weaponry. Every morning is a battle. You versus tangles, hairpins, and the terrifying prospect of emerging with a bald spot that gets painted into the family portrait. Somewhere in the chaos, a brush goes missing, and you suspect the dog. The day's grooming begins not with calm, but with tactical precision. Your valet arrives first, armed with a tray of hairbrushes, combs, oils, and ribbons. Behind him lurks a lady's maid, tasked with managing volume and taming flyaways, two euphemisms for wrestling your hair into submission. They examine your scalp as if surveying a battlefield, plotting their strategy in whispers that you suspect are partly in Latin. Step 1. Detangling. This is performed with a wide-toothed comb and the gentle touch of a carpenter sanding down a barn door. The process is accompanied by soothing remarks. Almost done, Your Highness, just 3 dozen more knots. And the occasional sharp intake of breath as a particularly stubborn snarl refuses to yield. If tears are shed, they're dabbed away with a monogrammed handkerchief, then added to the tally of daily royal hardships. Step 2. Brushing. Out comes the boar, bristle brush, advertised as imported and gentle, though you remain unconvinced. This brush is wielded with the energy of a tournament fencer, sweeping through your locks in brisk strokes meant to produce a healthy sheen, or, more likely, friction burns. All the while, your hair is spritzed with various tonics: rosewater for shine, lavender for scent, and something vaguely medicinal to discourage unwelcome wildlife. Step 3. Styling. This stage can last anywhere from 10 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the complexity of the day's agenda and the ambitions of your hairdresser. Simple styles are out of the question. Elaborate braids, curls, and architectural updos are the order of the day. Each pin is inserted with surgical precision and a whispered prayer that it won't give way during afternoon tea. On especially ambitious mornings, your head may become home to entire bouquets of silk flowers, pearl combs, and, once, a discreetly perched porcelain dove. Of course, this entire process takes place under the watchful eyes of various relatives. Your mother offers advice. Your siblings offer unhelpful commentary. Is that supposed to look like that? And the palace pets regard your transformation with the silent judgment only animals can provide. there's also the ever-present risk that a mischievous younger brother will sneak in and swap your hair ribbon for a piece of bacon. Grooming is not without its hazards. Hair oils spill, pins go missing, brushes vanish, usually to reappear days later, carried off by the family dog or discovered inside a forgotten hat box. Scalp injuries are considered occupational hazards. On one memorable occasion, a rogue curl caught fire from a candle, resulting in a new family rule: no open flames within 6 feet of the royal fringe. By the end, your hair is a feat of engineering, defying gravity and logic. You're left dizzy, over-accessorized, and not entirely convinced it was worth the struggle. But in the palace, presentation is everything, even if the only people who see you are already related to you. So, you gather your dignity, your hairpins, and your composure, and face the world, hoping the next brush isn't lurking in the corgi's bed. In the palace, even grooming is a contact sport. Every few weeks, you get to play host to foreign royalty, which is code for hours of forced small talk, with someone whose only hobby is conquering small countries and collecting hats. Every handshake is a potential diplomatic crisis, every smile analyzed by 6 different embassies. You're just trying not to mispronounce Luxembourg while someone from Bavaria gifts you a goose, again. The preparations for a state visit begin long before the guests arrive. The palace is thrown into a frenzy of cleaning, decorating, and panic-induced list-making. New carpets are unrolled, flowers are arranged in unnatural formations, and every portrait of a royal ancestor is dusted to within an inch of its gilt. Footmen practice bowing in front of mirrors, while the chef debates whether beetroot soup is more offensive to the Italians or the Danes. When the big day arrives, you are woken up earlier than usual and forcibly stuffed into your most uncomfortable formal wear. Sashes, medals, and the family jewels make an appearance. So many shiny things that you risk blinding the archbishop if you turn too quickly. There's always at least one item you forget, which is then retrieved by a panicked valet with the speed and focus of a foxhound. The guests themselves are a study in polite chaos. They arrive in gleaming carriages, trailing clouds of perfume, nervous diplomats, and trunks large enough to house a minor orchestra. Their names are unpronounceable, their titles endless, and their family trees complicated enough to require a flow chart. You smile, bow, and attempt to keep track of who is an archduke, who is a grand duchess, and who is just here for the dessert course. The receiving line is an endurance trial. There are handshakes, so many handshakes. Some are bone-crushing, some limp, all a minefield of etiquette. The French prefer a certain angle, the Germans value firmness, and the Russians just want to see if you flinch. You move down the line, trying not to confuse the Count of Hesse-Darmstadt with the Prince of Liechtenstein. It's happened before, and the family still talks about the incident. Meanwhile, Aunt Augusta provides whispered reminders. That's the ambassador's wife, not his daughter. Don't comment on her hat. Then, the banquet. State dinners make royal breakfast look like a picnic. There are more courses than you can count, and every dish is selected for its supposed neutrality: boiled potatoes, bland roast fowl, and a dessert that tastes like politics and missed opportunities. Toasts are made in 5 languages, with interpreters on hand to avoid accidentally declaring war over a mistranslation of bon appetit. After dinner, there is entertainment, usually a string quartet and, if someone is feeling adventurous, a poetry reading. The visiting royals pretend to listen, but you can see them plotting to escape for a smoke or a gossip session behind the drapes. You yourself dream of hiding under the table until everyone goes home. Inevitably, something goes wrong. A dog bites the Spanish ambassador. The wrong anthem is played, or a minor duke mistakes the punch bowl for his hat. Each incident is recorded in the annals of palace history as a learning opportunity. The staff mutter apologies, the guests pretend not to notice, and everyone quietly agrees to blame the French. Finally, the guests leave. The palace breathes a sigh of relief, and you are free to loosen your sash and reclaim your dignity. Another state visit survived, another round of international incidents narrowly averted. You wonder what to do with the goose. Perhaps gift it to the next archduke. After all, in royal circles, regifting is just good diplomacy. You're expected to enjoy the royal gardens, acres of perfectly trimmed hedges, traumatized peacocks, and a suspicious number of marble statues that look a lot like deceased relatives. Every plant has its own gardener. Every gardener has a complaint about your cousin's dog, and somewhere you're being chased by a bee while pretending to appreciate a tulip with a Latin name longer than your entire title. The royal garden is not a simple patch of greenery. It is a living testament to centuries of aristocratic indecision, obscure French horticultural theories, and an ongoing competition to see who can grow the world's saddest pineapple. Pathways wind for miles, leading past topiary animals of questionable resemblance, fountains that gurgle with aristocratic dignity, and rosebeds so vigorously perfumed you risk fainting before you reach the dahlias. A garden stroll is always scheduled, never spontaneous. The walk begins with a parade of family members, some eager, most resigned, all impeccably dressed for mud. You are handed a parasol, a guide to the notable shrubs of the realm, and, if you're lucky, a slice of shortbread for the journey. The gardeners bow from behind their wheelbarrows, each hoping today is not the day your spaniel digs up the prized begonias. They're quick to share updates about root rot, mildew, and the time a distant uncle mistook the compost heap for a picnic spot. The garden's main event, however, is always the peacocks. There are dozens, strutting, shrieking, occasionally fighting each other for the best spot in the Sunday. Officially, they're symbols of regal beauty and status. Unofficially, they're feathered menaces with a flair for melodrama. The last time you tried to feed them crumbs, they organized a mutiny and chased a footman up a willow tree. Their shrieks can be heard as far away as the library, and it's rumored they once caused a visiting countess to faint into the ornamental pond. Marble statues loom at every turn. Some are classical, others suspiciously familial. You're certain one of the cherubs is just your uncle in disguise, judging by the receding hairline and the disapproving expression. Statues serve as landmarks and, occasionally, as perches for birds with little respect for royal ancestors. It's a family tradition to pretend the mossy bust near the gazebo isn't covered in pigeon droppings, even though everyone knows it is. Botanical highlights are announced with great fanfare. Someone always points out the ancient mulberry, the award-winning rhododendrons, or the legendary Queen's tulip, which blooms once every decade and, according to family legend, heralds a year of mild political unrest. Children are encouraged to sketch the flowers. Adults are encouraged to admire the lawns, which are mowed in patterns only visible from the palace roof. A trip to the greenhouse is a rite of passage. Inside, the humidity is tropical, the air thick with the scent of mystery plant diseases, and every surface occupied by pots, trellises, and the odd sleeping gardener. You're shown rare orchids, a cactus from India, and a lemon tree that has not produced a lemon since the Crimean War. Your polite admiration is noted in a ledger kept by the head gardener, who rewards enthusiasm with a cutting of something vaguely poisonous. As the tour winds down, someone suggests a game of croquet, which inevitably descends into chaos when a peacock steals the ball. You retreat indoors, pollen-stained, slightly sunburned, and chased by a bee that will not be denied. The royal garden. Beautiful, bewildering, and only occasionally fatal. A paradise for the plants, if not always for the people. Behind every bookcase, tapestry, or suspiciously ornate vase, there's a secret door. Royals don't just gossip in corridors. They scuttle through hidden passages, popping out at awkward moments like disgraced magicians. Half the family has used these to escape dull dinners, awkward suitors, or the looming threat of piano practice. You once found your uncle napping in a broom closet, claiming diplomatic immunity. The existence of secret passageways is the worst-kept secret in the palace. Every child learns the first rule of survival: never trust a door that looks like it belongs. The Grand Library's revolving bookcase, for instance, is less about literary ambition and more about reaching the kitchens in under 2 minutes flat. Even the Queen herself is rumoured to have taken the hidden stairs when she needed air during a particularly long debate about napkin folding. The official explanation for these passages is security, but unofficially, they're for avoiding responsibility. Need to miss a state banquet? Slip into the panelling behind the portrait gallery and emerge hours later in the conservatory, feigning confusion and holding a suspiciously fresh scone. Want to overhear a scandal? Crouch in the linen chute, just above the blue drawing room, and listen as the staff debate whether the Count of Saxony really did wear mismatched socks to dinner. Some passageways are centuries old, built when privacy meant hiding from both assassins and the tax collector. They're lined with drafty stone, heavy cobwebs, and the occasional forgotten piece of royal laundry. Others are more recent additions, narrow, wallpapered tunnels designed for quick access to the dessert trolley, or perhaps just to make the palace architect's life interesting. Navigating these tunnels is an art. There are codes to remember. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks, and a whispered Victoria sends her regards. Secret signals to exchange, and, most importantly, a keen sense of direction. The uninitiated are likely to get lost for days, surfacing in the wrong wing just in time to join a choir rehearsal or, worse, a surprise etiquette lesson. Everyone has a story about getting trapped in a passage behind the music room, forced to listen to Cousin Harriet's 4-hour harp practice with no hope of escape. Secret passages are the ultimate playground for mischief. Siblings plot daring raids on the kitchens, cousins exchange cryptic notes by candlelight, and the family dog has been known to vanish through a trapdoor, only to reappear hours later with suspiciously sticky whiskers. More than one courtier has discovered the hard way that leaning on the wrong wall panel during a royal audience can lead to a sudden, undignified disappearance, followed by the sound of laughter echoing from behind the wainscoting. But the passages aren't just for fun. They're a last line of defense against boredom, scandal, and the occasional overzealous historian. During state visits, you can watch dignitaries search in vain for a missing princess, all the while she's sitting behind a false wall, quietly eating petite fours and reading forbidden novels by candlelight. Of course, with every secret comes the occasional mishap. A maid once locked herself in for hours, armed only with a dustpan and her wits. A royal hamster escaped and built a minor civilization behind the wine cellar door, and every few years, a handyman is summoned to rescue a relative who mistook the dumbwaiter shaft for a shortcut to the billiard room. Secret passageways. Proof that even in the most glittering palaces, everyone needs a way out. And sometimes, the greatest royal adventures are the ones nobody's supposed to know about, but everyone does. Physical fitness is important, at least according to your third cousin who reads French pamphlets. You try fencing, croquet, and something called calisthenics, all under the watchful eye of a personal trainer who thinks jogging is a crime against decency. Sometimes you're made to ride a wooden horse for core strength. At least you're not alone. Everyone else is just as confused, and someone's always fainting dramatically onto the croquet lawn. Exercise in the palace is equal parts spectacle and confusion. The day might start with a round of light stretching, which involves lying on a Persian rug, while a governess calls out numbers in German and a footman opens every window for the bracing air. Your first task: avoid frostbite while performing 10 side bends and pretending not to notice when your pajama leg rips. This, you are told, builds character. Then comes fencing, the official sport of people who want to look athletic without actually breaking a sweat. You are kitted out in enough layers to survive a minor duel, handed a rapier, and urged to en garde by a French instructor who has survived 4 revolutions and refuses to be impressed by anything less than a perfect parry. The match is less Errol Flynn and more frantic umbrella jousting. At least once per lesson, you drop your foil, step on your opponent's foot, or tangle yourself in your own sash. The instructor sighs and mutters something about lost causes and hereditary clumsiness. If it's a fine day, everyone is herded outside for croquet. The only sport where the chief skill is not dying of boredom before the last wicket. The game lasts for hours. The rules change depending on who's winning. And the Queen's dog has a habit of stealing the balls, resulting in a half-hour chase and much undignified shouting. At some point, someone faints for the drama. Someone else accuses a sibling of cheating correctly, and a footman is left to fetch a new mallet from the tool shed. Calisthenics are a more recent and terrifying innovation, imported from the continent by an aunt who claims that vitality is next to godliness. This session involves leaping, hopping, and waving your arms in precise patterns, all while maintaining a serene expression. If you appear even slightly out of breath, the instructor scolds you for lacking royal stamina. If you ask why you can't just go for a walk, you're told that modern exercise must be seen to be believed, which is true, because nobody would believe it without witnessing the spectacle. Then there is the wooden hobby horse, a contraption of springs, leather, and misguided optimism. You mount it in the middle of the ballroom while the staff pretend this is perfectly normal. You bounce up and down, desperately trying to look composed as the footmen snicker behind their gloves. It's supposed to strengthen the core and build equestrian confidence, though you suspect it just gives the staff something to talk about at supper. Occasionally, the dog attempts to join in, and once, a visiting duke insisted on a turn, resulting in a minor diplomatic incident and 3 broken spindles. At the end of each session, you're congratulated on your effort and presented with a glass of lukewarm water. Hydration, apparently, being as suspicious as any other modern habit. You stagger back to your room, limbs aching, dignity battered, and quietly vow never to exercise again. But tomorrow, the hobby horse will be waiting, and the Queen will expect you to vault onto it with a smile. In the palace, fitness isn't just a routine, it's a spectacle, and nobody's quite sure who's meant to enjoy it most. So, as the gaslights fade and the palace grows quiet, you can finally close your eyes. No royal protocol, no drafty corridors, no butler hovering at the foot of your bed with a silver-plated spoon just in case. You've survived the truly disturbing life of Victorian London royals. The corsets, the gossip, the daily existential crisis over tepid gruel, and the ever-present fear of being painted into the family portrait while looking mildly constipated. Tonight, you can be grateful for your humble, modern comforts. Your bed isn't stuffed with horsehair. You can wear pajamas without a monogram, and no one is lurking in your bathroom holding a ceremonial sponge. You've made it through imaginary mornings where the biggest scandal was whether you buttered your bread with the correct knife. And let's be honest, even if you didn't, the only consequence is that your cat might judge you. It's easy to look back and laugh at the suffering, the drama, and the absurd rituals that shaped royal life. But beneath the layers of etiquette, boredom, and silk, those royals were just people, stubborn, hopeful, frequently anxious. and doing their best not to faint in public. They survived a world where privacy was a myth, hygiene was optional, and every meal was both a feast and a threat to national security. Somehow, through awkward dinners, scandalous letters, and enough passive aggression to power the British Museum, they managed to endure. So tonight, as you tuck yourself into your clean, quiet bed, maybe whisper a silent thank you to your ancestors, the ones who wore less painful underwear, who eventually invented modern plumbing, and who didn't have to pose for oil paintings after skipping a bath. Be grateful for your peace, your solitude, and your right to sleep without a valet lurking in the shadows. Because history is hilarious, terrifying, and honestly, a little gross. But it's proof that people have always been creative, resilient, and spectacularly weird. Sleep well, knowing you've outlasted the age of corsets and cold porridge. And if you dream of palaces tonight, may your breakfast always be hot, your slippers always fluffy, and your family drama safely muted in a WhatsApp group. Good night.